Yeah, welcome back, viewer, from wherever you are viewing us. This is Pan-African Friday, a program that comes to you all the way from UBC studios here on Nile Avenue in Kampala, looking at issues that affect the African people, the African race, the African people living both in Africa but outside of Africa. On the program, we are having the panelists here in the studio, but also having our brother and sister from US and UK who have joined us in this discussion of issues of color. Are you a victim of your color? Do you even appreciate that you are black? Because I have seen people who are also trying to break out, like Ndugu Kedi was saying, that other than being oppressed, we also try as much as possible to discriminate and dismate ourselves. If he talks about a number of millions of children that are aborted, and that is a disheartening part of it. But now we'll go back to Joy. Joy, as a professional, a parent, and also a career woman, your experience of this racism on yourself as a person in the UK.
Thank you very much. Welcome back, James and my colleagues here. So my sister was saying that there is no white or black. For us in the UK, we know that there is white or black. In fact, the Equality Act recognizes color as a ground for discrimination. So if you don't identify the color, then you may not actually hit that ground for that discrimination. So we don't want to talk about color, but color is a recognized category, or characteristic in the Equality Act. So sometimes you may have to say, I've been discriminated because of my color. So we are allowed to use color as a ground for this, as a ground for discrimination, or as part of your identity here. I think in the US they don't talk a lot about color, but here we do, and you have to mention it if you think that's the reason why you've been treated unfairly or differently. So of course, coming here as a young girl, immediately after Makerere in 2003, I lived, my family here, was in this predominantly white neighborhood. So you start seeing it that you're different. Nobody needs to tell you that you look different, because you will see that you definitely look different. And of course, coming from Uganda, where, of course, we were all the same, this was very different for me as well. So you start feeling it. And when you feel like that, the law recognizes that other people should at least approach you with some kind of empathy, to know that your difference makes you actually see things also in a different way, or experience things in a different way. So again, I went to Kingston University, and in that class, I was doing masters in dispute resolution. I was again the only black, the only black person in that class. I think we're about 18. Wow. We were two ladies, and I was the only black young, and also the young one in that class. So again, you start feeling the difference. Why am I giving it this background? That when you start feeling different, you want to know why you start to think about why you are different. And in this case, I could say I was black. Now, you start looking at how other people are going to treat you. Like, say, if I say something, do they listen to me? If, for example, they say something, they need to be sensitive that maybe because of my color, because of my background, I'm going to feel different about that. So we expect the other people also start thinking about the way they talk about certain things, because of what we call diversity. They need to understand how your experience affects or influences the way you see things.
Sure.
Like, for example, when I was talking about that video, I said, if there had been another white child, would I have felt the same? Yes, I would have felt the same, because I care about all children. But then it is what happened that was different, that maybe didn't meet my expectation, that made me think, oh, this is actually because of that girl's color. because I didn't know about her nationality. That's when you get to know the person even deeper, because we can say we are all British here. We can say that safely. But we know when you see that video, the first thing you see is color. That's why we cannot hide from that fact. And that's what hits you. So for me, I remember the first time I experienced racism. I was posted to Cambridge to work, the Home Office. And this was the first immigration detention center in 2005. And so most of the people who were in that place were detainees, or if you want to call them detainees, for me, I call them asylum seekers. So they were not from here, if you know what I mean. I'm putting it in quotes. They were not white. But because we also know that there are black people and Asians also who are British here. Exactly. But in that place, the only people who were not white were the residents or were detainees. So everybody else was working there, or they were coming in from London. So I happened to be the only black person in that village. It's in the village somewhere there in Cambridge. So that meant everybody knew me in that place. It also meant that even the bus driver knew where I was coming from, because I was very easy to identify because of my color. And again, why am I going on about this? Because I want you people to recognize that color plays a big role, when it comes to these kind of things that we experience in this country. Color is the first thing the person sees when they see you. So we can't hide away from that. And that's why the Equality Act mentions it, because you are picked on because of that color. So I remember, like at the gate, we had like 2 gates to go through. And then there is this lady at, security at the reception where we had to go. It was winter time. I had my badge, which was also Home Office badge. But when I said, good morning, this lady told me, are you an interpreter? Now you'd be saying, what is wrong with that? But you are talking to somebody who is educated, and I know the motive behind that statement. Somebody doesn't have to call out your color to tell, to be racist to you. Sure. But you can know when you're being treated unfairly because of who you are. Now this woman tells me, I said, good morning. She goes, are you here? Are you an interpreter? And when you realize that, you become defensive. So it means you put up your guards as well. So I said, were you expecting an interpreter? And then another guy came from behind, because you're the only black who comes in. So they all know you. But that lady, I think, was new at the reception. So the gentleman goes, oh, good morning, Joy. And then this woman gets embarrassed. But I was feeling like, does she think the only thing I can do is to speak my language? But I was a lawyer working there, with the Home Office as well. But I felt she thought the only thing I could do was to speak my language. Now, I can tell you so many examples where you feel like somebody's talking to you like that because of who you are, because of your color. I don't think they would have told that to another colleague who is white, that, oh, are you here to be, because you are an interpreter? No. But again, somebody's trying to put you down. And that's how you make me feel is very important. Because I was feeling, does this person think the only thing I can do is to speak my language? It means they don't expect you to be as important as some other people. True. But again, in this job, like as a social worker, you're going to work with families. And the moment you meet this family, maybe they're middle class or whatever, because abuse comes from all backgrounds. So you're working with a family, maybe their child has issues and all that. And the moment you knock at their door, they see this black, and then for me, I come with all these characteristics. I'm a black woman, and I've also been a black young woman. All those are protected, characteristics in the Equality Act. You can be discriminated because of your race, because of your age, and because of your gender. Have you seen that? Now, all those are deficits, from a person like me, and I'm aware of those characteristics, because it's very important that we let our children know. Somebody here said we need to talk about it. So in schools here, it's an expectation. In primary school, they talk about racism. And children grow up knowing that they're not supposed to say certain things because they are offensive. And as you grow up, it becomes a hate crime. if you treat somebody, if you discriminate somebody because of those characteristics which are protected, that includes color, ethnicity, nationality, it becomes a hate crime. And sometimes you make a complaint because you feel you've been discriminated because of your race. And then you make a complaint, and then they turn it around against you. We call it victimization as well. So they come in so many forms. But like I said, because of my position and training, they will not tell it to you to your face.
Exactly.
Because they know that you know your rights, and they know that you can take them on. So we experience it from different levels, depending on where you are operating from. I don't know what I can
Joy,
share,
I think
I haven't experienced, like, for example, somebody throwing a rat in front of your door. We found a rat. At some point, there was a place where we live. We found a dead rat. And I was telling my husband, it's possible the rat just died and came here. But my sister told me, no, Joy, there are no rats here. Somebody killed that rat and brought it to you.
I know. Now,
That is racism.
I know. In fact, we take time to listen to all these things because we have people who believe that out of Africa there's a paradise. That when you get in that paradise, things work out automatically and everything you find, but they are not aware that there could be rats, dead rats at your door, that you could be asked to think that you are an interpreter, that the best that you can be as a black person. So we talk all these things so that people finally understand that yes, there are opportunities out there, but there are also a number of issues that as black people need to consider. And also that maybe this issue of racism is more compounded and more subtle and complicated than we look just looking at color, because for us, like I said at the opening of this program, that when sometimes we see people coming from the outside of Africa, those people who call themselves whichever colors they have, we consider them may be good, and in fact to the extent that the colonizer has instilled that thinking in an African mind, that these people are superior to you and they are good, better than you are. But maybe when we hear some of these stories, then it gives us the second thinking. These people who are teaching us religion, these people who are lecturing to us the human rights, these people who are teaching us how to treat others, are they capable even of treating themselves fairly, let alone treating the other races, the Asians and the Africans? Look, KD, will come to you from the experience of Joy. How has been your experience in the US?
Can you unmute yourself, KD?
KD, we are not getting your sound.
Unmute yourself.
Yeah.
KD, you're still muted.
Wow, I think
all right. So many buttons.
We're now getting
we
you.
Got it right.
Yeah.
Yes. I say sometimes that when I hear my brother Mututa speaking, I'm tongue-tied because you put so many profound ideas. I want to respond to them all, but let me just respond to a couple of points. Talking about it might be more than just color.
Sure.
I had earlier referred to the book I published in 1997 called Moving Beyond Racism, New Strategies for a New Millennium. And one of the things that I tried to do was, number one, isolate this concept of racism and put it in context of what it really is. And number two, give us a new framework by which we can move beyond it and then attend to what it is that we take serious about our own destiny and fate. Number one, I don't talk about racism without a discussion of caste-based hierarchy. I'll repeat, caste-based hierarchy actually entered human civilization from the Indian continent, where caste system has been quite entrenched. And of course, as you know, the darkest people, the Dalits, so-called untouchables, are at the lowest order of the caste within the Hindu system. But if we look around the world, we can see that in Chinese culture, the darker skinned people, because they work in the sun and therefore have darker skin, are looked down upon those who have the very lightest skin, who do not have to work in the sun. The same is true in Japan. The same is true across Central and South America. The same is true everywhere almost in the world except for California, where the elites have the time to lay on the beach and get as dark as they can take before they get cancer. But that's a whole other story. So we have caste-based hierarchy. And I have arranged this caste-based hierarchy, and I think I can defend it. It's very consistent. These castes are, number one, what we call racism is really colorism. And even within the black community, we can still see hierarchy based upon colorism.
Sure.
If you're damn near white and bright, you're all right. If you're tan, you're the man. If you're brown, stick around. But if you're black, you better get back. We see it within our own people. It's gender, and I believe was it our sister Takare was mentioning earlier about gender, and Joy was mentioning it also. Gender is very important in the world insofar as hierarchy, and we can see a consistency there, even as this consistency extends into these quote-unquote brand new genders, which I think they're up to configuring a brand new gender about every 2 months now in the United States. They got a bunch of them. It extends into wealth. Oprah Winfrey, she's not white, she's not a male, but Oprah Winfrey's wealth gives her a tremendous amount of clout and respect within the larger social economic hierarchy, political hierarchy. It extends into physical characteristics. If you put a group of men applying to be the boss of an office and they all have the exact same qualifications, it's pretty consistent. The tallest man will get the job. If you have a group of women together, the woman with the more quote-unquote attractive European-like features will be given preference over a woman who might be equally or greater qualified to be able to carry out the task that is before them. This extends also into education, and this could mean a real education or a functional education. Now, I said real education, I mean a certified education or a functional education. I'll be honest with you. Many people think I have multiple college degrees. I've been accused of having too many doctorates. I never enrolled a day in college, even though during my younger years, I spent so many hours on campus, major campuses across this country and in other countries, in the libraries all day long for months at a time. People thought I was enrolled at the schools. But what I was doing was accelerating my learning, and actually during my university years, I worked in a biological research laboratory from the age of 19. So I had a specialized education that I still continue with a lot of passion and fervor to this day. And the last of these 6 hierarchical bases of caste is religion. And 3 candidates for the same job, equally qualified. In this country, a Christian country, the Christian will give preference. In an Islamic country, the Muslim will give preference, etc. And I find it very interesting that amongst these 3 Abrahamic religious traditions, they seem to hate each other the most, even though the foundation of their religion seems to be the same. So we know that this is all off. Lastly, I want to empower us with a powerful, functional tool set. And someone did talk about this earlier when they mentioned about adopting others' religion and values. And this is culture. In the same book, when I started talking about what is our solution to this pernicious problem of racism being promoted in our community and around the world, I said culture. It has always been about culture. It always will be about culture. Culture is, again, we have 6 axioms of culture. Culture is your religion or your expression of collective spirituality. Culture is your language. My parents at my birth gave me a Scottish man's name. What am I going to do with a Scottish man's name, making my fate and my destiny on this planet as a Pan-African?
Sure.
I had to go and find my name, rename myself, recover my confidence, and as Peter Tosh said, pick myself up, dust myself off, and start all over again.
Sure.
Culture is spirituality, your language. Culture is your traditions. What did you do on the winter solstice? Did you support an Anglican or a Catholic religion with their mythology of creation of this divine one? Or did you find your own story in the Nile Valley, which we all know their story is based upon previously existing stories about the birth of the sun, the winter solstice, and all these other analogs of our own ancient cosmology? Culture is your perspective of history. Two groups can share the same history. The British people and the Kenya Land and Freedom Army shared a common history, but the perspective of that history was really quite different.
Sure.
There's a Kenyan proverb that I love to cite. Until the lion learns to write, the tale of the hunt will always glorify the hunter.
Sure.
Well, now we are the writers. We are the ones wielding the pen to power. We are the lion, and we have our own narratives now to tell. Culture is your morality system, your values, and lastly, of the six, culture is your logic and your reasoning. Hence, under the paradigm shift that I made when I published this book and understood what I was writing, my objective reasoning, subjective, I call it objective reasoning because I've held it so long, is that racism only empowers me because it reminds me that I have to be prepared to face challenges all across all aspects of social, political, economic life.
Sure.
And my daddy told me, if you have to compete, you have to always be prepared to win and only win. I could continue, but I think I may have provoked a few thoughts.
I know, and really it's very interesting to hear some of those, and that's why we always like you when you're on this show. You know, we can always laugh, but serious stuff that we are looking at, because these are issues that you are raising at what makes a person a person. You may later on color, but you are distinct because you believe in something, because you are looking at something, because you have a background from something. And it is very important for people, for viewers who are following us on this program, to understand some of the things. So we say, if you are not founded in your culture, you are gone, because you are James. Who is James, for heaven's sake? Whether that man was a wizard or a witch, I don't know, because I never saw him. My ancestors never saw him. But we believe in some of these names because someone has said that you are going to be a James. And people feel bad when some of their names are mentioned. Say, no, don't call me by this. There's a first name, there's a second name, wherever. But the most important...
James was a saint in the Bible. So you are a Christian, and therefore you must go by the name James.
Who even said that he was a saint?
That's what they say. That's what the Bible says, and you will have trouble. You will have trouble trying to...
But Brother Katie, we shall be back to you with a lot of your provocative statements. Rachel, you have something to say about the two presentations from Joy and Katie.
I think first of all I'd like to respond to one of the things that Sister Joy talked about earlier. And I did not, or I'm not coming from a point of view that says racism does not exist, or that the different racial categories are not of any consequence, especially in the Western world. That's not where I'm coming from. What I meant is that there is no one living or has ever lived who actually meets the true definition of the color white, is really what I meant. And there is also no one living who is a true representation of the color black. And the reason why these categories are so forcefully reinforced is because of what Brother Katie has just been talking about. They stratify society. They lock people in place. So it is very important, especially to the colonizers, to keep these categories intact. Because if you see some of the things that are derogative, some of the things that are negative in our thinking and in other ways, when they talk about the other kind of magic, what do they call it? As in witchcraft, what do they call it? Why don't they call it white magic? Or when they say, for example, when the devil was painted, I've not seen him painted the other color. So this...
But you could see the devil at work in that video, in that clip.
Yes, but he's definitely dark. I've not seen a devil.
The clip, the devils are the white girls who are smashing the head of the black guy.
Yes, but we are talking about
The presentation.
the
Yeah,
presentations that we usually see. And so what I'm saying is that the reason for naming people white or black is the colonizers' way of stratifying us forever.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that is the reason why, for example, those same things, when you're talking about Japan, and typically the Chinese, the Han Chinese are the lighter skinned ones. And those ones came later and transposed and imposed themselves on existing cultures. So one of the ways to keep people forever down there is to make them think that, among other things, their appearance is the reason why they should not aspire for better. In fact, they're incapable. And that is an argument that is forcefully presented in forums wherever we find varying complexions. We talked about last week that this same thing is happening even here in Africa, in places like Mali, where Berbers, because of their mixing with the Arabs and so on, and Arabs themselves, brought this same construct. When they imposed themselves on the indigenous peoples of Mali, and now they claim they're higher up on the hierarchy, it also is true in Ethiopia, where the same Afro-Asian mix has imposed the lighter-skinned Ethiopians over the ones that look like you and me, and they now take the economics and the politics and justify this injustice. So what we are saying, there's Mauritania, but it's also true of Northern Africa. In places like Egypt and Algeria, they conveniently have erased the Berbers and other indigenous peoples from wherever it matters. When it comes to referring to the pyramids and so on and so forth, they will not credit the darker skinned Egyptians who are actually responsible for these things. So what I am saying is that this business of calling people black is it's a mentality. It is a symbol of domination. It is a vehicle to keep people down. Because no one in the truest sense of the color is white, and no one is black. But when you say black, automatically, because of these ways of reasoning and the education system and the structures, the institutions, when you say I am black, someone just thinks all you can do is cook and clean, because when you say white, someone automatically thinks, okay, a doctor, lawyer, teacher, because of the construct that is now being projected even into another generation. Yeah. So I'm not saying, Sister Joy, that it is not important. I am saying what is attached to it is really problematic.
And I've seen it. I was reading a book when I think it was the first lady, one of the American first ladies, who refused to jump in a plane because it was being piloted by a black man.
Well, she thinks he should be a cook.
Yes.
So how can a cook pilot a plane?
Maybe like in Joy's experience, it could have been a better interpreter than anything beyond that.
But the best, and Kate will tell you, the best guys at the Space Center, NASA, are actually black.
Are they acknowledged as such?
Because
whether you acknowledge them or not, the facts are there. I mean, it is one thing.
When they come, for example, the spokesperson of that organization, generally it's these,
but really, these things what we are talking about, the issues that Joy and Kade are raising are very cardinal. Because even when Kade was talking about the presentation, when you have a woman, because she looks better in the features and
according to the Caucasian.
Yes, she will likely get something. Even here, you know, sometimes I do political imaging, but marketing an ugly candidate can be problematic.
What is ugly?
That is another very serious.
Exactly. So when you talk about, and in fact, we have in the local saying that kale kongachi
mweru. Colonial.
Yeah, these are the specifications that we are talking about.
All this that we have been talking about, to me, really constitute a very serious body of knowledge to be disseminated and shared. We are running a very big risk on the African continent, especially on the African continent. And why do I say so? We are bringing up a generation which has lost interest in themselves. We are at a point where, even in our leisure industry, here on the African continent, mainly, anything to do with a fair, they say fair color, they will have preferential treatment. Be it in offices. Here we are getting examples from our brother here, the RDC, Comrade Cheyune, that a whole prime minister of one of the countries on the African continent had to push aside his friends because there was a delegation from Europe of the white men who are coming. He said, let me first go and see the whites. Now,
the Caucasians, they're not white.
We all, for purposes of this debate, we all know, we all know that there's nothing like white really, because we know how white looks like.
Exactly.
Like we all know that there's nothing like black because we know a human being.
Exactly.
But for purposes of this debate, let's adopt those words, and we shall be understood after all. But the message, certainly, which my sister Rachel, and I think that's where our sister Joy was coming from, that we all know that there's nothing really called white, there's nothing called black, in as far as a human being is concerned. But you see, for purposes of being able to carry out, to begin carrying out surgery, on some of these things, let's say, okay, you are this, because, that's what we have called it, and it will help us in getting around the solution. What I'm saying is that on the African continent, we have got a growing tendency where the African person has consistently, drawing from colonial times, denied himself, herself of identity. We no longer know who we are, and we are proud continuously. The majority of the African person is proud to associate himself with what he is not. Africa, as a value-led society, has lost the values. We are now a society of rights. Everything rights. That notwithstanding, you will get a situation beyond Africa whereby the black person, and we know what we mean when I say black, black person has been mistreated. Tell me, where has the black person not been mistreated? You go to India, for instance. The darker you are, Australia is even worse, because for them they have got a policy, they may not have written it, whereby they are systematically eliminating those who are not of the white color.
In New Zealand?
In New Zealand, and we all know how New Zealand came about, and those people in New Zealand and how they came there. Even those ones who are discriminating against the other color, they themselves, their great-grandfathers were criminals who were being chased away from other countries and dumped into those areas.
Reported wholesale.
On the African continent, I was saying, even in South Africa, you know the apartheid, what it entailed. And now, when you get the raising up of the ugly heads in xenophobic attacks, Africa or black man on black man, is what is being resurrected when you see, like the recent example in Memphis, whereby the institutionally, the white man has created an apparatus whereby the black man in color has been trained to hate himself so much that the software you are talking about is so whitenized, if there is such a word in English. And the thinking, the attitude, and this is what Malcolm X was looking at. This is what Marcus Garvey talked about. This is what brother Dr. Martin Luther King talked about, that my children should, I must work very hard, as a society collectively, we must work very hard, that my children tomorrow are not going to be judged by the skin, the color of their skin, but what they are able to put out in society. Unfortunately, what we have consistently seen is that what has been cumulatively learnt by the black man, by the black-skinned people, from the white-skinned people, is that the darker, the more devilish, and incapable of fostering, liberating themselves and having their lives better. Therefore, we are at a stage where we need a revolution. And this revolution is an ideological revolution. The ability to know that we have all along been lied to, and that we are against stronger forces whereby the resources are in the hands of a given white community who are consistently and persistently preaching and facilitating the gospel that the black person is incapable of proper leadership and incapable of dispensing any known human rights. That is why they send people here on the African continent to supervise as to whether you have met certain standards, the standards which you have not put up yourselves. And that is why it becomes very difficult unless we think of and act on the ideological liberation. It will continuously be hard for us as the Africans, wherever we are, because we have already considered here that it is not just on the African continent.
Exactly.
You see, there are certain phrases like African American. Now, what are therefore those people who came from Britain and they are in America? What about those who came from Italy and they are in the Madonnas? What about the Trumps whose grandfathers were coming from Germany? What are they? Certain phrases like people, and I think
they're
that's
German
where
Americans.
that's
and
where.
Irish.
But they never say that. I think that's
there.
what was disturbing. That's what was disturbing my sister Takari here. That the issue of referring somebody to as black, white, yes, we know that surely does not exist. But you see, you have a tall order explaining using the principle of an ordinary citizen, a man on the street. He will certainly tell you that one is black, the other one, and they had even advanced the argument. They had even taken it to the most sophisticated laboratories. Because when you read Chris Rings, I think, that lady who was taking very serious studies in DNA, they had reached an extent very, very stupid conclusion,
yes,
whereby the study, so-called study, had discovered, so they said, had reached and they reached the conclusion that the whites were superior in thinking and intelligence. Then they were followed by some people who were around there, and therefore the dark-skinned ones were at the very low tail end. When in actual sense, and they have continuously done that. They have continuously done that. The universities, be it Harvard and some other universities, have denied the black people certain honors, even when they over-merit. You know, you merit something, you are supposed to be part of that team, but they deny you technically simply because you are of the dark skin. And it goes even in churches. Because we know this Bishop Centum, he was supposed to get something from the to be admitted in a certain class of those who have served at the highest level in the Church of England, and he has never been admitted. Why? Simply on the account of his color. So Joy is very right when she says, look, we identify that there are different colors for purposes of using it as a base to readdress the wrongs that have been committed and continue to be committed on the account of color. But when Chief Kaidi says, look, I no longer even watch viral videos whereby we have got these everyday occurrences of shootings by the white community, be it police, be it these, you forgive my language, idiots in white young men moving into bars, and because these are everyday occurrences. Yeah. And like I said, for me, the unsafest place on the planet Earth, I don't know, God keeps our brothers and sisters in America, is actually America. That if we must therefore package a message, our message as the Pan-Africanists should be to form a very serious coalition of people who are liberated, and we go and educate the ignorant, idiotic, white, racist Americans that there is one race and it is called human race.
Thank you. I know we're running out of time. I'll get back to you, Joy, as you on your final statements on this. But I know we'll still have more time and have you, because it's been some time since we last had interaction with you. But you now can make your last remarks in response to some of the statements that have been made here.
Yeah, thank you very much. You know, like what Brother Kaidi was saying, this discussions, you know, make us think about so many things going on.
Sure.
And I can tell you, just like the way, when you see a person walk into your living room and they have a disability, you will see, there are normally two things that you will see. You will see their color, you will see the disability. And that's why the law tends to look at what makes you be treated differently. And that thing has to be called out. And in order to have a discussion, you have to name it and give a name to that elephant in the room. Because if you don't call it out, how are you going to have that comfortable conversation? If we don't tell our children that, oh, because you look different, you know, you are likely to be treated like this, how are you going to be empowered? So, like what my brother's been saying here is that we need to talk about and go and educate. That's what we do. I was just sharing with my friend Kaidi during the break that for me, I watch it because I have a duty to educate.
Exactly.
And I cannot educate people without knowing the context. Because if we don't, these other racists are going to run with a different narrative and start blaming actually the victim.
Sure.
But if we are in these positions, we need to see it. We need to see it so that we can educate those people by showing them how this is so wrong. And I think for me, that's why I don't tell myself like what my friend Kaidi does when he doesn't follow those ones. For me, I have to, because I need to understand the context of these problems, and because we have the duty to educate people and call out when these things happen. But again, what I agree with my sister when she says that they are keeping these categories to oppress us or to suppress us, all those things. It is true, because if you don't recognize it, then it is likely not to exist. They may sweep it under the carpet, but if they mention it, then they have, because some people are going to call you black because they know you are black, and black in a very negative way. So sure. Again, you are right, it's a two-edged sword. And my daughter doesn't think she's black, she thinks she's brown. So you are right. You know what I mean? My daughter says, Mom, there is nobody who is black.
Exactly.
She's brown.
Yeah, she's right.
So we are really struggling. But the most important thing is to say, we are all human, like what my friend just said, human race. Because these things of color confuse everybody, and you feel sorry for the child. But again, at the same time, when the child says, Mom, they called me this, you need to have that conversation again, and to be able to empower the child. And the child will go out there saying, I am different, but I can tell you, I've been discriminated when I've been performing the roles of a director, but I can't be a director because I know I'm a young black woman, you know, but I know I am better at what I do more than my boss. But they won't promote me because I'm a young black woman.
Exactly.
And they don't have to tell me that. But if I feel I've been squeezed a lot, the law says I can take them on and say they are treating me like this because
exactly.
I am a black woman. But again, the law in itself is also two-edged sword. How am I going to prove? Because they will try to say all kinds of things. But we know that people have won cases. If you feel they haven't promoted you because you are a black person, you can make that complaint, you know, and somehow it is difficult to prove. You end up again being victimized. They think,
Sure.
oh, you think your race is the most important thing here, but actually it's about other things. But it's about having these conversations. When you sense racism, speak about it. And here the law says they need to believe you, they need to listen to you. It's not about what the other person thinks, but about how they have made you feel. And that's why even in the royal family, I think you guys have heard about our dear Meghan, Princess, you know, I call up my Princess Meghan, you know, where she has felt treated differently. And then, you know, and there was this policy. Somebody mentioned a policy which is not written, but there was this policy where they could not recruit black people in the palace to work there. They could only go to clean. Can you imagine? And we
Clean
all know those people
toilets.
are not very educated.
What are you cleaning? Really?
Yes, and we know the reference is
Then
not
when she
very
spoke up,
educated,
she became a
and they could
devil.
only allow a black person to go on
No
as
wonder
a
she
cleaner,
went to America.
you know. So these things are so personal to us.
I know.
Thank you so much.
I know. Thank you so much. Really, it hurts to know that you can only be employed in a place as a cleaner to clean people's poo, and that's the best you can do. And yet, some of these guys, when you look at them, like he put it, they are the idiots of the world, the first class of the idiots that you can understand.
Yeah,
but
barbaric.
because they have that feeling, and of course sometimes we have also, as the blacker people, allowed them to do that, they get their leeway. Nduk Keidi, you can come to us with your closing remarks. Thank you so much, Joy.
Wonderful, wonderful. What a joy hearing everyone speak, Joy and company. A couple of ideas I wanted to insert before I finish today. In reaction, response to what has been happening to us, point number one, when your group's demographics fail, we're left with whatever they, the winners, give us.
Sure.
And the second point I want to make is very important, and I say this to the males, to the men. In a society where they neutralize the black man, you then will have easy access to the family, to the children, the women, the community, and the culture. So much of this could not be taking place if not for the neutralization, the social cultural castration of black men, something we should resist. But let me respond the way I always enjoy responding, especially when we're closing out. We have the tools at hand to reverse oppression. We've had them in our hand for many, many years. We could do a better job of utilizing them for what they're worth. I have in my hand a book. This book was published in 1944, the largest study of African Americans ever done, 1,436 pages. The book entitled An American Dilemma, The Negro Problem and Modern Democracy. And on page 167 through 170, they laid out a plan by which they could fulfill this vision. If we forget about the means for the moment and consider only the quantitative goal, there is no doubt that the overwhelming majority of white Americans desire that there be as few Negroes as possible in America. And over the next 4 pages, they laid out a plan of how to do it. Ultimately said, we can only reduce the black population by controlling fertility.
Sure.
And they
sure.
put together a master plan for doing so. I have that book in my hand, written by Gunnar Myrdal. I have similar books by Samuel P. Huntington, Zbigniew Brzezinski, and others. But you know something? That plan was 1,436 pages long. Guess what? I write more than they do.
Sure.
If you're going to be competing, you must only compete to win. Don't compete to sustain the brutality of the contest. Don't compete to say, I'm bound to lose because they're so unjust, so unfair. They're always so consistent and inequitable exchange with people like me. I compete to win. I never knew white supremacy when I grew up because our families, we created an intentional community in a rural area. We had 21 black families. and everything we had was superior to the whites who lived around us. So I did not know about this thing called white supremacy until I moved to Atlanta, and broken-spirited black people defined white supremacy for me. I rejected that eventually and decided to create a different course. So we have the tools in hand.
Sure.
Culture is spirituality, language, including our names, our traditions and holidays, our morals, our values, our perspective of history, and culture is our logic and our reason. We also have the East African community moving toward creating Africa's first superpower state. That should be a focus of so many of our conversations. How do we facilitate that? How do we all engage and invest in the creation of the East African Federation, create peace and stability? I like what I see happening, that Somalia is coming closer now, and Ethiopia has put an application to join the EAC. We're creating Africa's first superpower state. That should be our greatest priority. Last couple points. We're seeing the third generation of African heads of state doing a good job, but they have already given birth to, and we're starting to see the first implications of the fourth generation of African leadership heads of state. Good governance, as Mo Ibrahim would remind us. This is something we should be very excited about. And my last point, we have, with our African mother continent, the greatest storehouse of natural and human resources of any part of the planet. There's no battle that we cannot win. We have these tools already in our hand, and what we don't have, we have the pen to write the next chapter of our global victory.
Yes.
To create the great Swahili empire.
I like that. You make my day. I think all these things, and I wish really we could take time and reflect on some of these issues, because really, how can you be a society with no language, with no culture, with no nothing, and then you also blaming others for imposing theirs on you? In other words, it is you to blame, because the Africans ourselves, we are the problem. Like, and Kaid has put it very rightly at the beginning of this program. And by the way, because I didn't have time to introduce him at the beginning, but he has done it himself. Kaid is a writer, is a media personality, if you are in Africa, would now be a very good politician. But even in the US, of course, you can be a politician there, and he's the Pan-African ambassador.
And one more thing, Comrade Mututa, I also am a 67-year-old man who this morning did my 37th day in a row of 200 plus push-ups in a single set every day. Today, I got one 270.
Next time we shall have you on camera doing that, so that others can learn from you. Exactly. And Joy from London, I know there is a lot that needs to be also learned from them. When our brothers and sisters and children sit in Africa and hear of the American story, they think that everything there is what you need to have. But maybe now the explanations we have and what Joy is telling us from the Queen's Land shows that definitely things are not as rosy as they seem to. But that, again, Kaid tells us that we have to struggle, and that struggle with the pen and the book and the brains that Africans have, we still can be at the top of the game. But no one is going to be there to sympathize with us. Like you saw how that black woman was being beaten, no one could even sympathize with her. So that is the actual life that we are living here, that us Africans, no one is going to sympathize with us, but we have to be at the top of our game. I think we'll also make our closing remarks within that short time, and then we shall be off.
I think I'd like to say that in relation to where we find ourselves at this time, we spoke briefly about the place of the United Nations. Maybe we'll build on it in subsequent shows. But where we find ourselves now is really, I think, the third phase of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We talked about how the construct of individual rights is a Caucasian thing. For us, we were value-based, But what we see unfolding is really what we said, that the construct concerning where the map they have for the world is unfolding before our eyes. So if we don't take center stage, they will live our lives for us.
Exactly. Ndugu Rugarama.
We, as the African people, from wherever we are on the globe, have got what it takes to liberate ourselves from the evils of racial discrimination.
Okay.
It is not enough to cry all the time, but it is important to point out and talk about these evils because it sets the platform upon which we are able to address the evils.
Yeah, thank you so much, panelists, for this program. And thank you very much, like one said, thank you so very much to KD and Joy, who have at least spent their mornings. I think KD is in the night, and Joy. KD, what time is it there?
The time right now where I am, I hope you're hearing me. Yeah, the time right now where I am is just after midnight. So you are tucking me into bed. Thank you very much.
You better
I probably won't sleep tonight.
You better get to bed now. But Joy, thank you for the morning. I know now you are getting down out to get to work. And how cold is London?
No, today is fine. It's bright. It's looking good. Let me see. We must be. I'm just checking for the weather. Just quickly to see. It's not so bad today.
Okay.
Because I can see it's bright outside.
Oh, thank you.
It is -2.
Oh, -2.
-2.
Better.
Yeah, -2.
It's not a nice one. I think we still thank God for Africa, and we thank God for the beauty and the good conditions that we have here. We may be having other issues, but definitely we are better off.
You got the weather.
Yes.
You got the weather right.
Thank you so much, you people, and I wish you Joy a nice day. And Katie, you better get back to bed until tomorrow when we shall be in touch. Thank you so much, and have the lovely of the rest of the day. Thank you.
Greetings to you all.
Yeah.